Before the Manobo farm their land, they perform a series of rituals. So what I find interesting about these rituals is that not only do they reflect the worldview and the culture of the Manobos, but also their knowledge on agriculture and farming. So it's a blend of their culture and their sustainable farming practices. So the farming ritual is called the kakamot, and it marks the beginning of a cropping year for the Manobo, and it is also when the community prays for a bountiful harvest. It reflects their knowledge of the environment, their ancestral domain, and the supremacy of their god, Manama. I hope I'm saying that right. So the rituals, they start as soon as they see Orion's belt, Balatik, appear in the skies. And then when that happens, the community starts to prepare food from fresh waters or forests and cooks rice in a tinombo or bamboo. And then the bailan, so I guess their counterpart for the babaylan, offers a panubad, a prayer to the kalayag, the spirits of the plants, and starts the ritual. So for the first part of the ritual, farm implements are cleaned and then they are placed into a heap of cooked rice. And then the Manobo, they pray over it and seeds are offered too. So after the panubad, so the farm implements are removed, and then depending on how much rice stuck to the bolo, that's their cue on how bountiful the harvest is going to be. So if not that much rice sticks to the bolo, then they will have to offer more rituals and beg for more blessings from the spirits. So I guess kung madaming kanin na dumikit sa bolo mo, ayun, sikat ka na. Flex mo na yon na yun, magiging bountiful yung harvest mo. Next part of the ritual in the next video. So now that your bolo is covered in rice, it's time to go to the next part of the ritual. The Manobo, they depend on a lot of signs and omens because they believe that that's how the spirits talk to them. And these spirits are the ones that guard the forests, the trees, the plants, and the farm sites, which are all important for farming. At this point, the Manobo are now going to choose the land in which they are going to farm on, and they're going to clear it so that they can plant. This stage is called the Panlawag or Panloyu. I hope I'm saying that right. So the farmers, they call on the spirit of the plants, the kalayag, to send an omen to them through a turtle dove or the limokon. So as they are clearing the land, they're going to wait for the omen, which is a call from the limokon. If it comes from the wrong direction, it's not a good sign. And no matter how far they've already cleaned the land, they're going to stop and move to a different spot. And the reason why is because they believe if they don't heed the omen, then something bad will happen, like a child getting sick or even dying. For them, the omen is good when they only hear the limokon after they have spent a long time cutting grass and bushes. I guess I can kinda imagine it as like the spirit talking through the dove, like, "Oy, wag dyan," or something like that as they're still clearing it. So once they've already cleared it and that's when they hear the limokon, then I guess parang, oh, okay na yan, parang ganun. Next part in part 3. Okay, so just to recap, the first part was to dip the bolo in the rice to see how bountiful the harvest would be, making sure it's bountiful. And the second would be to wait for the turtle dove to give the omen if you're planting in the correct place. Before I mention the next step, what's cool is also they have a system which they call akat, which is a labor sharing system between the farmers. They didn't really go into detail about it, but it's just cool. I guess it's like a community farming endeavor. Alright, so now the next part of the ritual is performed by the bailan, wherein the Bailan will sacrifice a chicken by cutting its head off, and they will dig a small hole in the eastern direction of this farm site and pour the blood of the chicken down the hole. And then the Bailan will say this invocation. I'll just read the English part. So, Spirit of Kalayag, I call on you. I am here to open this field. I offer this chicken to the soil. I ask permission from you. Allow me to till this land, that I may have ample harvest. May I request too that Pakoid won't tempt us, that the evil that surrounds us. Please stay apart from us. I may have a small area to till. I call on you, Kalayag. I call on you, sister, Talu Agkap. So no mention. I don't know what a Pakoid or a Talu Agkap is. I'm assuming they are spirits. So then they cover the chicken blood hole with soil, and the Bailan places their offerings of manika leaf, betel nut, lime, apog, and tobacco in an alik leaf on the ground of the covered hole. The next part is for farmers to wait for omens in their dreams at night. So dreams like being bitten by a snake or a tree falling over are bad. Dreams of sending a snake away or crossing a clear water of a river are good. So if they get a bad dream, they will repeat this ritual. I guess they'll like sacrifice more to the spirits. But if the bad dream keeps happening again, then the farmer will sadly have to look for another area to plant. More on part 4. Okay, so the rice has stuck to the bolo, and the turtle dove gave the right omens, and now hopefully you've had good dreams about the land where you were shooing away a snake or crossing clear water. So now you can go on to the next step of the ritual. So now they go to the process of the pangamot, or the underbrushing. They didn't really say what that means, but anyways, after that is the popolod, or the cutting of big trees. But of course, they're going to first have a ritual asking the spirits of the trees to leave and for the insects in the grounds to transfer to another habitation. And then next would be golo, the next stage, in which the trunks are chopped into pieces to be dried under the sun for 15 consecutive days. This happens during gulabong, sunny days. So the trunks that were dried are now going to go through the silaban, where the farmers, they burn them. So while the trunks are being burned, the farmer whistles and shouts, "Oy, oy, kalamag!" calling upon the air to blow the fire and finish the task before nightfall. So finally, after all of that work, it is now time to plant. So this ritual is an annual thing, as I read earlier. So it must be really exhausting to have to go through all these rituals year by year. The actual farming in the next part, where I share a pretty cool farming technique that they use. Right, after all those rituals, the Manobo farmer is now ready to plant. So the site is ready for planting, or urok. So the Manobo farmers, they use this quite ingenious technique in order to protect their crops from birds. So here, so first they're going to plant the dawa seeds. Now, they didn't really say what a dawa is in this book, but I'm assuming it's another kind of plant that is not rice. So they call this part the sawod to dawa. So there, they do it before the main crop, which is rice, humoy. So the dawa, apparently, it's a plant that resembles rice. It looks like rice. And because they plant it earlier than the rice, it will bear fruit exactly at the time when the rice grains are still soft and are most attractive to the birds. The birds, they get distracted and they stay away from the soft rice grains so to eat the dawa grains. So by the time the birds have consumed the dawa grains in the fields, the rice grains are already too hard for their taste. So I find that pretty cool and pretty genius. And it just goes to show that there's a lot of practical, useful, and just genius knowledge among our indigenous peoples. So now that the rice is planted, the farming area has to be maintained. Hilamon is the next part in farming that comes next to remove unwanted grasses that have grown in the fields. They then build a small fire from the dry weeds in order to control the insects. So here we see, indigenous pesticide. The Manobo see to it that nothing disturbs the growing humoy, the growing rice. So trails are detoured so that passerbys could not destroy the fields. They're also careful. They try to be as quiet as possible near the fields in order to respect the spirits who might depart together with the promise of a good harvest. So as the rice is growing, the Manobo, they still need to do other stuff, especially to get food. So they hunt and they fish. The mga soon, the hunter, will explore the forests with his dog, the mga lowag no aso. So there's another ritual wherein the hunter will offer tobacco, betel nut, manika leaf, and apog to Yakan, the spirit guard of wild animals. The fisherman will also have a ritual and address it to Alimugkat, the spirit that dwells in the water. So just like in farming, for hunting and fishing, the Manobo will once again listen and observe their dreams. So now it's harvest time. Everybody is careful not to offend the spirits. So no one is allowed to complain, to curse, to yawn, or sigh while the Gaani harvest is going on. That sounds pretty hard. You can't yawn, you can't sigh. So now, the harvest is done. They set aside a small portion of the rice for a tasting ceremony called goting, and which is also part of the Thanksgiving celebration for a bountiful harvest called Hiluto. The end of the harvest will be in our last video. So finally, the rice has been harvested and it is time for the Hiluto, which is the Thanksgiving celebration. So now there's going to be a big celebration. They're going to butcher a pig, serve delicious food in gratitude to Kalayag, and the Bailan offers a panubad to Manama for the good harvest. The men and the women in the community then perform the Bualawan, a traditional dance that depicts the entire farming process. So all the videos that I showed so far. So they dance to the beat of the bangkakaw, a log of a dangkalan tree carved and formed into a pestle and used by the magbibinayo woman to pound rice. So the women do the pounding while the whole community dances. They all dance to the rhythm created by women pounding rice grains. So that sounds pretty fun. I mean, they're actually preparing the rice, but they also turned it into a music festival. So it's pretty cool. So the Bolawan, the dance, is also an opportunity for one to find a future mate. You can start seeing here how integral farming is to the community and to the culture and how it's really integrated into their way of life. After the harvest, they plant kamote, banana, cassava, and taro, leaving the land to follow over a period of time. So I read a similar thing in the book about the Teduray. So after they plant, they will leave it to follow, meaning they will leave the land alone and they will look for a new spot to plant on for the next year. And I don't know how long, it doesn't say how long they leave the land to follow here, but if I remember in the Teduray book, it's like a number of years. They allow the land to recover from the farming practice. So the indigenous farming system of the Manobo has become quite rare, according to this book, because of changes brought by modern agricultural technologies and environmental problems. So the point person of the Manobo for this book, Dato Doming, said that the use of chemicals and fertilizers have destroyed the productivity of the soil. He's saying that because of the modern farming that's happening now, the yield per harvest has been going down because they have not allowed the soil to rejuvenate itself. This part of the book ends with this. The Manobo should be allowed to practice their farming system and beliefs to sustain their capacity to produce food. After all, their tradition as a people directly connects them to nature, Manama's gift and man's source of life. For more videos on pre-colonial and indigenous Philippine culture, folklore, and mythology, subscribe to my YouTube channel and look for me on TikTok.